Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to SHIEL. I am Fran Moisa, a headhunter and talent advisor, broadcasting from lovely Malta, still not going anywhere, at least for the time being. Today on SHIEL, we're going to cover the topic of redundancy, predominantly from a psychological perspective. And my guest today, Patrick Sila, is going to share with us his experience, insights, and thoughts. Patrick is a registered psychologist, coach, and trainer, and director of Psy Potential in Malta. He works closely with organizations as well as individuals on a variety of topics relating to personal and professional development, leadership, emotional intelligence, as well as corporate programs. I'm really excited that Patrick has decided to share his knowledge with us, and hopefully it's going to be a great discussion today, and it will provide you all with some insight into how to navigate a harsh reality of our lives, which is redundancy. Without any further ado, I'll add to the stream Patrick. Patrick, good afternoon and welcome
Good
to SHIEL.
afternoon. Good afternoon. How are you, Fran?
I'm very well, thank you,
Very good.
Patrick, and thank you for joining us today.
You're
We
very
had a lot
welcome.
of interest in this topic, kind of a harsh reality, I
Yeah.
would say,
Yes. Yes.
that we are experiencing not only now during these times, but it is
hmm
unfortunately an ever occurring incident in our professional lives. I mean, I have been through it. You have been through it as well. And we thought that it would be a great idea to sort of pick your brains a little bit. You've got great experience working with both companies and individuals as a
hmm
psychologist, as a
Yes.
coach, as a trainer, to help us make a bit more sense of what is going on around us and how we can, as individuals, as well as companies, we can tackle this situation a lot better. So, in your
hmm
experience, Patrick, let's look a little bit from the individual perspective.
Sure.
When one is faced with the possibility of redundancy, and I don't mean that pure, in the traditional sense, that unfortunately you are faced with the possibility of not having a job in the immediate future, but it can also be the possibility of having your workload reduced. So instead of working 5 days a week, you're going to
hmm
work 2 days a week. What are the common emotions that an individual will experience when they are faced with this?
Well, Fran, I think we have to start by a very simple concept that in our lives there are three pillars that are fundamental to well-being, and these are health, love, and work. And when one of them is threatened, it impacts the others. So we cannot um, compartmentalize them. They don't live in a vacuum. They don't live on their own. They affect each other, and the three of them are super important for our well-being. In this case, we're talking about a situation that impacts work. It impacts our livelihood, our income, and possibly even our sense of purpose, our the way that we define ourselves and identify ourselves. So you put it very well, Fran. Before you called it a harsh reality, and I think we have to call it what it is. It is a harsh reality, and the reaction to that is not different from any significant loss that we go through. So, and when I say significant loss, I'm talking of loss of health, possibly loss of people that we love, and in this case, loss of our security. So yes, definitely the emotions that we go through are very similar to those that we go through when we suffer loss. So I'm sure even probably some of the listeners are familiar with the grief cycle that was established many years ago by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who said that at first we are shocked with the news, and it hits us really like a shock, and then we go through a stage of denial where we try to pretend that it's not happening or live as though it's not happening. There were incidences of people, for example, who were made redundant, who didn't even want to tell their families. Every morning they'd get up, dress up, and go for a walk, and then come back at the usual time, just to hide it, and even to hide it to themselves. Then there are stages where we start getting frustrated and angry at the situation, like, why did this happen to me? Why now? Why? And unfortunately, in many cases, if we're not careful, um, it is very common that when we face redundancy, we get depressed at one point, because it's because of the impact of it, the emotional impact. Um, Obviously, in most cases, what happens then typically is that we start to experiment, to negotiate, to try and build a different lifestyle, a new reality for ourselves, and eventually, hopefully, we come out of it. But today I want us to talk a little bit about the things that will help us to go through the curve and actually come out of it, because it's not that easy, and not everyone has the same resources. So I think it's something that, it's quite significant and important.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
and I think from my experience, and as we've discussed before this broadcast,
Hmm. Hmm.
when we look at this reality, these emotions that you have described through the grief process that one goes through are very normal. So they are nothing to be scared of, or they are
Exactly.
not
Exactly.
unnatural. These are
Hmm.
very normal reactions when faced with a situation that is unexpected and
Exactly.
unpleasant at the same time, as well. So I think that's kind of the first step, that we acknowledge it for what it
Hmm.
is, and
That's right. That's right.
it is a normal reaction that
Yeah.
one goes through. And what coping techniques, if you will, or what strategies one can adopt to manage these emotions better? And as you've noticed, I said to manage them, because to
Yeah.
eliminate them, I think it's
No, no,
impossible.
it's not even healthy to eliminate them, right? Because they are what one expects when faced with such a difficult reality. So, you know.
Exactly. So,
Mhm.
what can one do to manage these and navigate through them in a healthy and
Yeah.
constructive way?
Hmm. Well, I think, again, I'm going to take you back a bit, because in general, redundancy and anything related to that is another example of adversity that life throws at us. So I think that we should start at the prevention stage. So by building our resilience, even when things are going well, by investing in a healthy lifestyle, by making sure that, we are exercising, we're eating well, we're resting, we're taking the time with our families, investing in our relationships, getting the necessary support, building our support systems, investing in a positive mindset, a cognitive mindset that is focused on optimism and trying to be positive, even in the face of adversity. There are so many practices that will build our resilience muscle. It's a lot like building a muscle, right? That make us more prepared and more able to take the hit, to take the punch, okay, to roll with the punches. So when adversity does strike, and it doesn't have to be redundancy, it could be other things, we'll be in a better position to deal with it. And that is from the in a way we can say that's from the preventive point of view, like before it actually happens. Now, obviously, in the case of it happening, so if it does happen, and I guess this is a very timely topic, because we are living a reality locally where the market switched from a point where there was so much opportunity, and there were a lot of positions being opened and jobs being sought after, to companies and businesses that are struggling. So yes, it is quite a reality, and we are already seeing a number of redundancies that are taking place, and probably in 2021 we'll be expecting to see more. So definitely, there are some tips, and and approaches that we can adopt if we are faced with this, that will help us navigate through this reality should it happen. Let me go through them, but obviously feel free to jump in and ask me other questions as I go along. But
Sure.
I think,
And if anyone
yeah,
in our audience wants to as well, you can type in the
yeah,
comments, and either Patrick or myself will answer
exactly,
them as well.
exactly. So I think again, being prepared is always better than it being a shock. So I think we need to have the courage to face our employers and ask them, what is the situation? Like, what should I expect? Can I can I put my mind at rest that I will have a job? Okay. Later on, we'll talk a little bit about the obligations from the employer's perspective, but um, we owe it to our people to be as honest and transparent as possible about this, because they need to plan and they need to know what's going to happen. If we are given the news that we have been made redundant, it's first of all, it's very important that we get the exact reason in writing why it has happened. Okay. And don't be afraid to ask the questions. Have all other options been explored? Can I be redeployed to somewhere else? Can I work reduced hours, for example? All right. Is it possible to provide me with a financial buffer to support me until I find alternative work? Can you help me with finding alternative work? So I think the empowerment that can come from within, even in the face of such a blow, is very important, because it's very easy to get such a shock that
Mm,
you feel helpless and you feel that there's nothing you can do about it. And, which is even more dangerous, the risk of becoming very angry and bitter and burning your bridges. And one of the advice that we give people is that even if you feel that it's not fair, even if you feel that the company could have avoided this, don't burn your bridges. Don't leave on bad terms. Don't metaphorically slam the door behind you. It's
yeah,
better to leave peacefully and get a good reference letter, and make sure that you maintain your relationships, rather than just obviously, if your legal rights have been respected. So here we're not talking about legality. Here we're talking about feelings and emotions. Okay, because we can
exactly.
very
And
easily,
communication.
exactly.
Indeed, indeed.
I think the other part of this reality, which is also very important, is to which is not so psychological, it's very practical, but to review your finances and your financial resources and make the necessary lifestyle changes, to at least temporarily reduce costs, which it could mean that you need to have a bit of a difficult conversation with your family, where you explain what the situation is, so that we all carry the burden together. So, sometimes, and I think this can be very tempting, out of pride, we try to live as if nothing has happened, as if it hasn't happened. And this can be very dangerous. So I think it would be better to sit down with the family, talk to them, tell them what happened, this tell them what the prospects are and how you are feeling, and say, maybe this year, for example, we have to forfeit certain luxuries, maybe certain things that we used to buy, and for now at least, and have a very frank conversation with your family and friends, even perhaps refusing certain invitations to do things that cost money. Okay, at the moment, it's like there's not much going out, but still
Indeed.
there are other ways of spending
It's
money.
it's basically it puts the person in a position to prolong a waiting period
Yes,
that naturally
yes,
occurs after redundancy.
that's right,
The
that's right,
time in finding a new opportunity, going
that's
to
right.
interviews, by the time you
Hmm.
start. There are situations where this can happen fairly quickly, but
Yeah,
realistically, I think it's very important that one is mentally prepared um, for you know, allowing themselves the
Yeah,
time to find something else rather than expecting that something will
that's
come
right.
up tomorrow. And
Hmm.
if I can take you back slightly to what you said before, Patrick, because I think it's
Yeah.
something very, very important to re-highlight in this topic is to take a step back when you are faced with this news and not let your immediate reactions get
Hmm.
the best
Hmm.
of you, as anger,
Definitely.
like you said, because anger is a very natural and healthy emotion. Anger lets us
Yeah.
know when something wrong is being done to us, or we perceive something wrong being done to us. So
Hmm. Hmm.
being angry is not bad, but it's how we act on the anger and how we manage the anger from an external perspective that makes it either constructive or destructive for
Exactly.
one's personal situation. So if you
Yeah.
are
Hmm.
faced
Hmm.
with this reality, then do take a step back to let that initial
Hmm.
feeling sink in, sit with it, and then, as Patrick, as you said, go back to the situation, ask the questions that you need to, get a good reference letter, see what help is available for you. So, we make the best out of a bad situation.
That's right. That's right. I think one other point that is very important, and that we might not avail ourselves of, also because of, because the way it affects our dignity, is that we should reach out for help, and reach out to friends, to community for help, um, the and possibly even professional help, like getting some counseling or career coaching to help us deal with the different stages. I think one of the things that is really critical here is to accept the fact that this is not something that is to be taken lightly. Okay, we unfortunately we have seen situations where redundancy has had very terrible consequences on the people who have suffered them, and that can be avoided. So I think with the right level of support, and with the right level of planning and coaching, and having a plan and a strategy, we can help to weather the storm. And it's honestly, it's all about weathering the storm. It's not about trying to say that this is something easy, or this is something that people can do away with, because work is work, and it depends on who it hits, because it could hit someone. The person might be the only or main breadwinner of that family, and she might find herself in a position where she was providing for her family, and now there's no one to pay the bills, to pay the
Mhm.
loan, to cover the basics. So it can be that serious. It's no joke. So I think that reaching out, and I repeat, reaching out for help is so important. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not something that we should try to hide or keep inside. Um, Reach out, spread the word, tell people that you're looking for work, that you're on the market. Malta is a very densely populated country, and the networks are very condensed. So people get to
Mhm.
know each other. The network is very intricate. So people get to know, and the word spreads like, like forest fire. Sometimes I say that the internet is slow compared to compared to our social networks. Um, which, as we all know, has its disadvantages, because it's like you don't have much privacy, and you can't do much before
Yes,
the word spreads. But in this case, we should really must, like, take advantage of it, take advantage of the
indeed.
fact, that the networks are very close knit here, and that you can really spread out the word that, hey, you know what, I've gone through this, I've been made redundant, I need work. So, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, you
Mhm.
know now, obviously, there are a couple of other things that come to mind. So, for example, one of the first things that I ask people when they tell me about this, I tell them, okay, so what's your financial buffer? because the financial buffer is critical here. So it's one thing I need that job as soon as possible, and it's one thing that saying I can wait 3 months, and it's another thing saying that I can wait, for half a year, because this could actually be an opportunity to retrain, to build your personal brand, to start that business that you've always wanted to start, to do that course
Exactly.
that you've always wanted to do.
And you
But
never had
obviously,
the time. Yeah.
exactly. But what is important is this, and I want to make this very clear for those people who are hearing me. The last thing I want to do is to sound insensitive, okay? Because it's one thing when it hits a reality where it's really, really nearly tragic because the livelihood of that family or that person is threatened. And it's another thing when it hits a reality where, it's not okay, but it can be an opportunity for new things, for different things, for a change that perhaps you really wanted to do and never had the courage to do, and now sort of it was imposed. So that's another way of looking at it. If you can afford that, if there is a safe financial buffer to carry you through, it might be a really good idea to retrain and
And
try new
explore,
things and
exactly,
explore the
and
reality.
explore
Exactly.
new skills, upgrade your
Exactly.
skills, entertain perhaps different sectors or adjacent lines of work that, especially if the redundancy
Exactly.
occurs due to displacement of workforce,
That's
and
right.
then, you feel that your core discipline is going to be
Hmm.
highly affected by changes, and it's not going to keep its
Exactly.
current shape.
Exactly.
Obviously, like you said, Patrick, not everyone is in that opportune
No.
situation
No.
where they can have that safety net and financial buffer. And I think when you have the pressure of financials, I mean, we're both, family individuals, so we know
Exactly.
the extent and the impact that such a situation can have,
Hmm.
not only upon one's personal and professional well-being, but also upon the family. And I think what you said, the courage to go out there and ask for help is
Yes.
even more critical in a situation where the financial buffer is non-existent.
Hmm. Hmm.
So things like expanding your network and asking people for help, and this is why it's important that when you leave that job that you are being
Yeah.
made redundant from, you have that reference in place, because then it will be much
Definitely.
easier for you to
Hmm. Hmm.
navigate through
Yeah.
interviews. And I think that most, at least in Malta, most people, like
Yeah.
you said, are very candid, but they're also very warm and welcoming.
Yeah.
I'm yet to meet someone whom I've asked for help and they've turned me down outright. Maybe it's not the help we want, so maybe we go and ask someone, listen, do you have a job in your company? And they say no, but
Exactly.
let me have a look at your CV. Maybe it's a different conversation, but
There's a slight.
sorry, everyone.
Hi.
We
There
had
was.
uh,
Yeah.
something happened. I think it was on my end. Internet went down.
It,
Apologies for that.
that happens now.
So
It's the new
yes.
reality.
Um, so right, where were we? I wasn't expecting this. You see,
Yeah,
curveball.
I know that's the beauty of going live, right?
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. But we're back on track.
No,
So what I
you're
was
saying
saying is
about
that
the interview, like to spread the word, and that people
exactly to
rarely,
spread the word,
you
and
know,
maybe perhaps the help may not come in the shape or
exactly.
form that we
Yes.
intended or expected to. But it's better to explore
Hmm.
several
Hmm.
avenues and opportunities rather than sit there again. It's very normal to feel disheartened. It's very normal to feel overwhelmed. And if you need to
Yes.
take a day, two, three, four, five for your own mental health, for your own, personal tranquility, that is
Hmm.
also perfectly normal and
Yes.
safe to do
Yes.
so.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, Fran, you're reminding me of something that is very important, because the what what typically happens, like in any other loss, is that at first you get a lot of people asking you how you are, whether you need help, supporting you, etc., etc., and that usually happens in the beginning of the grief cycle. This is what happens when we lose someone. Okay, um, unfortunately, there's the point where reality really sinks in and we dip and we're at our lowest. Is the time when life goes on, people go back to their lives, and we find ourselves even more isolated. So this is the time where we need the most help, probably. So two things: one, it's important that we keep reaching out and we keep telling people and the people around us that we're not feeling okay, if that's the case. But also is important to try and create a routine at home that is similar to the one we had when we were working. So if we used to wake up at a certain time, we wake up at that certain time, get out of bed, dress up, wash up. Maybe it's an opportunity to start the day by going for a walk. Okay, create routine, create structure, and create activity. Because one of the worst things that we can do, and one of the most dangerous things that we can do, is slide into apathy, lethargy, and helplessness. Okay, that is actually what can eventually get us to slide into a depressive state. So it's very important when we're affected by something like this, where something that was such a big chunk of our day was suddenly removed and suddenly it's empty. Okay, not to fill it with emptiness, to try and fill it with
Mm,
structure and activity. And as you said, there could be a few days where you need to recover from the blow, but after a while, yes, get moving, start searching,
it's
start brushing
important.
up your CV, start applying for interviews, searching here and there, talking to people. So because one of the things that helps us a lot when we're faced with imposed negative change is to feel that we have a bit of a sense of control over what's going on. So rather than just stay there helpless, um, defeated, we try and gear up as much energy as we can. Sometimes we have to look, right in to find it, and try
Indeed.
to deal with the reality in as effective way as possible. Inaction is a very dangerous thing, because we can become, without wanting, we can start sliding into depression.
I
So,
completely agree, Patrick, and I'm glad that you brought this up
hmm.
because it
Hmm.
actually happened to me a couple of days ago. It's been a very long year,
Yeah,
unusually long year,
I agree. Yeah.
whereas I was not, and I'm not faced with redundancy. Like you said,
Mm.
it's the feeling of loss. And after
Yeah.
experiencing, a loss in the family, you know, probably another imminent one coming on the way. I was feeling very, very overwhelmed
Oh,
for
wow.
about a week, and it was
Yeah.
very hard for me to do anything. But after a couple of days just sitting there and then staring at a white wall, I
Mm.
thought, okay, so I can't function at full capacity at the moment.
Yes.
So what I will do instead is do one thing that will not make this whole day go to waste.
Hmm.
So whether that I, answered an email that I was supposed to answer last week, or, made a call, or done something productive, it has really helped. And then the next day I did another thing, and the
Yes.
following day another thing, and bit by bit then I brought myself up to, a like you said, a normality and an activity. And I think that is really important. Sometimes
Yes.
we can't do all at once and have it all figured out
No, no, that's right.
perfectly,
That's right. That's right.
but if we
And
start
it reminds
small.
me, yeah, it reminds me of at the moment I'm doing a course, a particular, another one, because I I always enjoy learning more and topping up. And one thing that really struck me, and I'm going to read it because I actually wrote it down on my
Okay.
notebook, my course notebook. And the instructor was telling us, like, and this is I think an old Indian philosophy, like something that is very ancient. And he said there is no power um, there is no power in the universe greater than the right action in the present moment, which is really interesting because sometimes when you feel crippled and you think of the whole day or you think of the whole month, it's overwhelming. But
Yes.
if the present moment you take the right action and so, for example, right action, get out of bed, okay, right action, take a shower, one by one, the right action, and it is a powerful way of g- of gaining momentum, because the
Yes.
big picture can be so overwhelming that in the right moment, like in that present moment, taking one decision after the other can really make the difference between coping and not coping. In fact, you hear many
Correct.
people tell you, I'm taking it one day at a time, which is a
Yes,
really
indeed.
healthy approach to it, rather than trying to say, oh my God, how am I going to cope with this big bigger picture. So
Exactly.
yes, I think
Exactly.
and as you said, I mean, when you experience loss, any kind of loss will take us through these stages. So whether it's losing someone from in your family or a friend, or whether it's redundancy, or whether it's losing part of your health, like you can't do what you used to do before, they are all events that trigger off the grief process that we can really learn from, grow from, and eventually emerge stronger and wiser. But it takes its time. It needs its time. We can't short circuit these things. It's not even healthy to short circuit these things.
Indeed, indeed. Because
Mhm.
later they will, come back in different forms that
Exactly.
could be
Yeah,
more
exactly.
damaging than their present
Exactly.
ones.
Exactly. Exactly.
We do have a question, Patrick. I'm going to put it
Hmm.
up on the
Sure.
screen. It is from Daria. Daria, thank you for joining us. So let's see. In the meantime, are there any professional help options for people? For example, you talked about the network of Malta, but when someone is somewhat cut out from such a network, how would they tap in that help?
Hmm. Okay, so from a professional point of view, especially I can talk mostly from a psychological point of view. There are agencies that you can approach that you can reach out to, like for example Richmond Foundation.
Indeed.
I know that Fran, you had one of your guests was
Last,
actually
indeed,
um,
indeed.
they do wonderful work, and they have people who are specialized to help people in dealing with these situations. So contacting Richmond Foundation, for example, and they will assign a psychologist or a counselor, and and that is something that, if, for example, you feel isolated and cut off from your network, as unfortunately many people who live in Malta and who have moved to Malta without their families and without their friends, wouldn't have necessarily the social network that local people have. And so in this case, what I said before could be difficult to achieve. So that is an example. And then there are other, they will definitely get you in touch with the people who can help with this kind of issue. And that's an example. And there are other professionals. So here we're talking about professional help, right? So there are other professionals. You can contact Caritas Malta as well, who offer counseling and psychotherapy services. So there are different avenues where you can get help for sure. So, and in this case, even if you send me a personal email, I can point you in the right direction. It won't be me because I am very full at the moment, and with personal counseling, I am completely saturated. But I will help. I'll be able to help you, to point you in the right direction to get help. Okay, Daria.
Thank
I hope
you.
I hope I
That is
answered your question.
good. If not, feel free, Daria, to expand, and we will come back to it. I hope that helped. If there is one thing I can add for Daria, Patrick,
Mm-hmm.
also in terms of network, because it can also network. It can be part of the psychological support, or it can be part of the professional support. And as you've
Yes,
mentioned, Patrick, if an expat here in Malta is here without the family, it can be slightly difficult. But
of course.
I have a very simple philosophy and a trick for that, just to get your mind moving. Look around you. When you step outside of your property, you will see most likely at least one shop. You will see at least three individuals within the next 10 minutes. So if we really open our eyes, and this is a very simplistic way of looking
Mm-hmm.
at things, but if we open our eyes and we try and think, okay, I work in hospitality and I don't have an opportunity at the moment. What else can I do?
Yeah.
Who can I speak with? And you start writing it down, then at least one thing will come up. If not, then there will be networks like Richmond Foundation. You can reach out to Patrick, for example. You can reach out to me, can try and
Yeah.
point you and find a solution together. But where there is a will, there is a way, and we just need to continue. And every action, even though it may not give us the immediate results, it will definitely take us closer to a result than not taking any action at all.
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe here we can even mention the 179 helpline, which is available for people who are really struggling and feeling like that there's no help available. So depending on how serious the situation is and how bad the people, but there's the support line 179. It gets you in touch with the Foundation for Social Welfare Services, and they will be again able to listen to the situation and get you in touch with the necessary professional help. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you,
Okay.
Patrick. And moving a bit now from
Yeah.
the personal experience onto the corporate side, because I think we should touch upon that
Yes.
as well. We perhaps won't have the time to go into it very deeply, but at the end of the day, even though the decision comes from the company, as it were,
Hmm.
it's not an easy decision for a business, for a CEO, for a director, for a manager to take. So they are also experiencing this anxiety,
Of
this
course.
feeling
Of
that,
course.
you're letting someone down. So, there is that negative emotional impact
Hmm.
onto their side as well.
Yes.
But how can companies, again, in your experience, Patrick, you've advised a
Hmm.
lot of businesses in a variety of sectors
Yes.
on these matters, how can they communicate with their employees
Sure.
better if they are faced with the redundancy prospect, and how they can assist their employees to navigate through this period?
Okay. Again, like I said before, we should start with prevention. So the employer and the business leaders really have we really have the obligation to try and find every other possible way to avoid having to make people redundant or even reduce their hours. So if we can find alternative ways of reducing costs, maybe like more practical ways, reduce maybe stopping or reducing overtime, looking at entertainment budgets and cars and like anywhere that you like when it's a time of crisis, we need to behave in a very responsible way and try to safeguard jobs. That is always the first priority. So I think it is the ethical responsibility and the moral responsibility of every employer to hand on heart say, There was absolutely nothing else I could do, and I accept resort to redundancy. There have been, as you know, and I'm sure some of the listeners know, there are many examples of people who have taken salary cuts, where people have made sacrifices so that the community, the employment, the staff community suffers as little as possible. So I think once we explore all other options, okay, like perhaps redeploying that individual to another department that is not suffering so much, for example, or going a bit easy on consultations and trying to look at internal resources to try and, so there are a number of options. But if those options have been explored, the single most important message that I want to give here is that to do it humanely, okay, to do it within a way that respects the dignity and the and the person as a whole. Okay, so there is something called the consultation, the redundancy consultation, which is extremely important, where the employer sits with the person who's going to be affected and explains, um, as clearly as possible, as honestly as possible, listens, opens a discussion, waits for the reaction, allows time for the person to respond and to react. Obviously, we do it privately, not in the presence of other people. Obviously, they need to be the first people who get to know, because we've heard, I'm sure you've heard of a number of horror stories where people got to know that they were going to be made redundant through the grapevine, through someone else, or worse still, they get to know by email or with a phone call. Okay, these are obviously not, these add, I would say they add injury to insult, not insult to injury, because it can be so hurtful to be treated like this, especially when you've given, many years and effort to the organization. So a proper, meaningful consultation with the people who are affected. Also, um, keep in mind that redundancies impact the general morale and motivation of all the employees, even those who remain. Okay, so people when you have to make people redundant, the impact is not just on the people who are made redundant, but on everyone. It creates anxiety, it creates uncertainty, sometimes guilt, believe it or not, the people who remain. There is the in
I can understand that.
in accidents and trauma, even in the war, there was a concept called survivor guilt, which is, the people who are not affected feel that they've betrayed the people who were affected. And again, it's something that needs to be dealt with. I think one of the most important things is that leaders need to be emotionally available. Okay, and I repeat it, emotionally available. So you don't, it's not hit and run, because it's such difficult news to give. It's so awkward to give it, that we might be tempted to, just say it and run off and try to not face reality. We need to be emotionally available, empathic, compassionate, professional, and deal with the aftermath of this. The more we are like that, the more we can minimize the damage that is caused. So that is something that I think, leaders and business leaders need to be open. We need to be honest. We need to have the courage to be transparent and communicate openly, give the reasons, and offer support. Okay, so one of the things that is coming out at the moment, big time, is the need for serious corporate wellness programs, so that companies invest in the well-being of their employees, whether or not there are going to be redundancies or not. Because, as you know, this COVID situation has impacted us on every level of our life,
Yes,
and people have been impacted quite badly.
indeed. Indeed.
Hmm.
And I think that we could all do with some insight, training, and hand holding,
Yeah.
as businesses as organizations when it comes to these things, because um, you know, I'm the type of person that I like to see the best in people.
Yes.
I want to believe the best. And I know that, there's a very, very small percentage of those that do this maliciously
Oh
or,
yes, for sure.
without
No,
heart.
no,
There is
I have
a
no
very,
doubt.
very small
I know.
percentage.
Mm.
Most
Yes.
of companies that are forced to go through this exercise is very nerve wracking. But if they can, like the advice we gave to individuals, if you can avail yourself of
Yes.
help out there that can help you to guide, to communicate this better, to approach this better, you will do not only yourself a favor, because it will also help you as a director or as a manager, or
Yeah.
whatever your position within the firm that has to go through those periods. um, it will help you understand and navigate this better, but it will infinitely impact positively the lives
Mhm.
of those who are directly affected by such a consequence.
Yes, I think I agree fully, Fran. I really I don't think it's a matter of being malicious or insensitive, but it can be a matter of avoiding that courageous, difficult conversation that you need to have, and avoiding facing the reaction, which people might shy away from. So this is why we're saying to be emotionally available. So it's not a matter of, this is a lot like breaking any kind of bad news. So the
Yes.
people who are involved with giving this news, first of all, should seek support themselves, because it's very, very uncomfortable and very distressful to have to do this. But also to read up a little bit about the best way of breaking bad news in a compassionate, professional way. For example, not to give false reassurances, because one of the mistakes that we can make is try to tell them, no, listen, don't worry, you'll soon find something else, or this may be temporary, we might offer you the job back soon. If it's not a reality, don't sugar the pill. Okay, we're not talking about trying to be unrealistic. We're saying to be compassionate and sensitive. So read up a bit about delivering bad news, because we all know, one of the things people complain about, for example, in the health sector, is not the quality of health. It's very often is the way sometimes news is delivered, you know,
Mm,
because people will be in such a rush, and they face so much pain and emotional struggle, that they become a bit immune to it, and they treat it as something light. And telling someone, for example, that they have cancer and they only have a year to live is not something that you just say like that. And unfortunately, we've had instances where this is what has happened. Okay.
mhm.
And I agree, it's not coming out of a place of cruelty or being malicious. A lot of it is avoiding the pain and the discomfort of having that courageous conversation. So I think we can do a lot to buffer the negative impact of the news that we give, and then tangibly offer support. Okay, so ask the person, how can we help you with this? What support can we give you? And be there for them, and it will make a big difference.
Yes, yes. Offer them, a reference if they don't ask for it. Maybe they
Exactly, even
forget
if
or
they
they are
don't
too
ask for it.
shocked. Exactly.
Yes.
Put them in touch, with support like Richmond Foundation or any other type of the
Yes,
organization
and jobs
that
plus
they
obviously as well.
would, and Jobs Plus, exactly. So there are several ways. Try and think. If I was
Hmm.
in this person's position, what um, what I would appreciate,
Yeah.
what sort of information I would seek, um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
that can
Yeah.
assist through these times. We are nearing the end of the
Okay.
broadcast now. It is a very extensive topic,
Oh yes,
so
I know.
I'm sure we can talk for at least another hour. But I'm sure that everyone is tired. We've tried to give you an insight, opening a window,
That's
if
right.
you will, into getting your mind thinking and working. And maybe it's not something that applies to you now, but you may find it useful in the future, or maybe not for you, but for your close ones or other
Hmm.
people that
Hmm.
you know. So if
Yes.
anyone has any further questions, now is the time to send us in. We're about 1 minute before the end. And I'd like to remind you that at the bottom of the screen, you can see Patrick's email address. So if you want to reach out to Patrick, either as an organization or as an individual for support, you can reach out to him via email. After this broadcast, we will share with you a advice sheet, if
Yeah.
you will, that Patrick has kindly put for us together. It will be the salient points of our
Yes.
discussion, particularly with regards to reaching out for help and some
Hmm.
steps that are beneficial for you as an individual to follow or as an organization to follow. So that will be available for download shortly after the end of this broadcast, and you can make use of it. It will be uploaded onto Facebook. If you have any issues with the download, please email Patrick or
Yeah.
myself.
I can send it over. Yeah.
Exactly, and we can send it over to you. My email address is going to come up on the screen shortly, and Patrick's is rolling down there as well. So, if for any reason you cannot reach it, just reach out to either of us, and we will send it across to you. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. If you found this useful, please share it further in your network. Patrick, I can't thank you enough for taking the
Thank you,
time.
Fran. Very welcome. Very welcome. This is a small way of trying to do, trying to be of support in the community in a time where we're being challenged. So, hopefully, we offered some support today. So,
I
thank
hope
you.
so. I hope
Thank
so
you very
too.
much.
I hope we could be of some use and value to the listeners. And remember, there is always help out there. Do reach
Yes.
out.
Yes.
And again, Patrick, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your
Thank
busy
you.
schedule to share this with us. I really appreciate it. Everyone, have a lovely evening. Again, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you on to the next one.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Ciao.